Hey.
No.
I'm a day. All right. Welcome to another episode of Lost in Translation. And this is the second episode, and my name is Damilola Afolabi. And today, I'm not Grandpa Tobi because I have with me a beautiful guest on the podcast today, and her name is Darlene. Hey, Darlene.
Hey, Dami.
Darlene.
My grandma used to call me that.
See, I'm in the spirit.
Yes.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Trying to wake up.
Trying to wait. So it turns out that this is your first ever recording in doing any kind of like recording
Yes, ever in life.
ever in life.
Mm-hmm.
How does that feel?
It's a little nerve-wracking.
You nervous?
I'm nervous.
Okay. I don't make yourself down. This is just all fun, all right?
Yeah.
Low stakes.
Okay.
So, Lost in Translation. What do you think about Lost in Translation? This is the second episode, and in this second episode, things like get really crazy with Grandpa and Trisha, But I wanted to just pick your brain about what you think about the whole concept of Lost in Translation.
As far as what you're doing,
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing, because it's a real thing. So I think it's good to address things like that and bring it to the forefront because we all, pretty much know or have experienced or know somebody who've experienced that.
Yeah.
Just the missing the translation of things when you're speaking to somebody. So I think it's a good thing to bring to the foreground.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I like how you say that because this all just stemmed from my experience as a Nigerian in America and just boiling it down to language. Someone said to me, "Can you give me the tea? Like, what's happening?" And I just literally wanted to make tea. Like,
Make
what do
some
you want? Earl Grey.
What kind you want?
What kind you want?
Ginger.
And then it hit me like, oh, like they're. When you move to a new culture, you have to understand how they communicate, and if you don't take time to listen, communication will be missed. So that's what gave birth to this. And I was like, oh, how can I use this to also start other conversations that pertain to our culture as Africans and African Americans. So I'm happy to be doing this with you this morning.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. It's so good to have you on the Lost in Translation podcast.
Thank you for having me.
See, I like that smile. That smile is going to make me forget all my questions.
Uh-oh.
So, I remember the first time I saw you. It was at salsa dancing.
It was at Denise's.
No, I seen you before.
Before that? Okay.
I seen you at Eileen's.
Okay.
Before Denise's.
Okay.
I seen you before then, but then Denise, then I saw you, dancing. I was like, she can move.
Oh yeah.
Where did you learn how to move like that?
Well, I think it's just something that obviously God put in me because I just love to dance. Like no matter what music comes on, I'm dancing. Even in the grocery store, my son used to be embarrassed because something, they just be playing crazy music in the store sometimes. You'd be like, hey. And he'd be like, Mom.
Stop.
But Latin dancing, I had friends that were from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, things like that. And my girlfriend, she took me dancing and I just fell in love and we would go all the time. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, dancing. So she taught me.
That's beautiful. So you're very much exposed to diverse cultures and you embrace that.
I do. I always say my friends are like the United Nations.
but then you grew up in Michigan.
I did.
And now you're in Reading. So how in the name of Michigan did you get exposed to that?
Here?
Yeah, did you come here and have that exposure to to multiple cultures and just having a heart for that?
I think just the way my parents raised me, people are people. So, of course you see skin color,
Yeah.
but you just see people. So it's just like I'm just friendly to everybody. So just in school, people that I was drawn to, you just talk to them, and some people you just become fast friends. Some people, you remain associates, and it just kept going, on through high school, through college, and into my adulthood. You just become friends with people, and then you just hang out. Like I have a Vietnamese friend, and I'm so happy
Oh my.
because she cooks for me.
Oh my.
Like when
I
you
love
say
that.
pho, like I don't eat any pho outside of hers because I'm so nervous. Like if I eat it and I'm gonna hate it because like hers is she spoiled
It's
me,
the bomb. All
Yeah,
right.
because she's like restaurant quality cook.
See, you need to give me that plug. You need to
Yeah.
introduce me to you. This your friend.
Well, you're gonna have to come to Georgia because that's where she is.
All the way in Georgia?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I went from Michigan to Georgia and then to here.
Wow.
So
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Something you said just piqued my interest. You talked about how your parents raised you,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm curious about that. I mean, you are well advanced now. Like you grew up in 70s, 80s America, and what was that like? Like, how did your parents raise you? What was that like? Like growing up in the culture and the community at that time.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like, and how is that different now from what you see?
So I think I just wasn't exposed to a lot of negativity, like things that exist, but I just wasn't exposed to it. I think just because my parents kind of sheltered us from that. Like it's there and they probably were experiencing it, but we were like oblivious,
Wow.
And so you hear about things, but I just didn't experience certain things until I got older. So my neighborhood was it was mostly Hispanic people right in my neighborhood.
In Michigan?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, we lived in an area where there was a large Latin culture. So there were, Cubans. It was mostly like Mexican.
Oh, where in Michigan was that?
In Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids.
But on the side of town we lived in. We lived on the west side of town.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we used to call it Little Mexico. That's what we used to say.
Poco Mexico.
But we loved it, because they had our little corner stores, so you can go try different stuff. And yeah, we loved it. And so it was different. And I do remember, though, the first time my sister and I met, we didn't meet them, but we saw a Cuban person because they looked like us. They, black skin.
Yeah.
And he started speaking Spanish, and we were like, he's speaking Spanish. So we went home and we asked my mom, we said, we saw a black guy, but he was speaking Spanish. And she said, oh, he's probably Cuban, So then she, of course, explained. So we were like, okay, but yeah.
That's a beautiful story.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, let's bring that to Lost in Translation now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Lost in Translation is follows that kind of concept too, where blacks, like, it's just our culture, our history. So you find a Nigerian African man, living in America with a foster child in his care who is an African American,
Mm-hmm.
and they just go at it every
Mm-hmm.
time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know your thoughts about that. I mean, the concept of it and the entire episode. Like, did you laugh? Did you enjoy? Did you get the jokes? I mean, what was it about episode 2 that what do you think about it?
I enjoyed it. I thought, parts of it was funny. And then it was interesting to see how not only, the age difference, how there can be a loss in translation, but also because, the grandpa's Nigerian, like literally from Nigeria, and she's from America, and she's saying things that he's like, wait, what are we talking about? Thinking that he understood what she said, but he didn't, and she's like, but why doesn't he understand what I'm saying? What is going on? So it was very interesting because those are real life things that happen. So.
Have you ever had an experience like that with an African person, or have you known someone who's experienced that where like something gets lost in translation?
Yeah, well, I'll just speak like recently. There's a person that I met here. She's from Germany. So, we say certain things, and she's almost like, I told her, you have like the inquisitivity like a child, because she'll say, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because she doesn't understand like how we word things sometimes.
Yeah.
And so she just ask like, what does that mean? But you're not thinking, as you're speaking, like she's not going to understand this. And you don't realize she doesn't until, she'll ask, what does that mean? So.
I like that. I like that. I like that. Because when we're creating the episode, gravy, gravy, it was from a place where I was like, what are the things that what kind of things can African people like give a knee-jerk reaction to? So if someone says, "Oh, I'm gravy," like like a Nigerian person, probably like a grandpa, we hear the extreme opposite of that. Like, and go from gravy. How do you go from gravy to graveyard?
Right.
Like, it's ridiculous. And I wonder, like, did you like did you grow up with your grandparents, like grandma, grandpa, and what was their take on, like, how did they react to spiritual situations, like like simple things that happen, like, take for example, I have an auntie back home, she's way older, like if you hit your leg, something like, "Oh, that's the devil. Get the anointing oil." Oh,
Not everything
like
the devil.
everything has the anointing oil. Like everything's like you cast them bind, and it's like they take spirituality so deep and so like into everything. Like, is that the same here? Is that a parallel here too within the African American culture?
Some like
Okay.
not everybody, of course, and probably not everybody
Yeah.
in Nigeria, but yeah, some are like that. Everything is, so what you call it, heavenly minded. Everything is so religious, as far as the speaking and things. But my grandparents weren't too much like that. My grandmother, my mom's mom, her dad, he died when I was really young. I remember him, but my grandma would make us go to church, every Sunday, and she went to a Baptist church, and then we'd be like, "Oh, we don't want to go," and she'd be like, "Get in the car," But she wasn't really like overly religious that, everything was, a spiritual matter. And then my dad's parents were not, that way either. So
when you think about how spirituality and culture was like back then for their generation, has there been any change in our generation today? What do you see? I mean, you been able to see the difference between that generation and this younger generation. Has there been any direct impact, like positively or negatively?
I think that, like, now, I feel like my generation, for sure, I can speak in my family, was definitely impacted by going to church, because we had to like go to church every Sunday. And so I think it did like affect us and instill different things in us than the generation in my family that's under us. It's just really different. They're not as, I think as they're getting older, they're more into spirituality than when they were growing up. So I think, and I'm not sure, if it's because like my parents were the way they were, leading to me and then to my son being where he is right now. So I think the effect is that if your parents were that way and instilled that in you, then you kind of mostly carry that on. Not everybody, but if they weren't, then you don't know any better. And so then you're not fully connected that way spiritually.
Oh, that's
If I'm making sense.
it does because I have a similar experience too, where like my mother practically dragged all of us to church. Like it's like that thing, like it's 7 a.m. You know,
Let's
yo,
go,
let's
let's go,
get
let's
ready.
go.
You know, and I can see the influence of that in my life. You know, but another thing that I find interesting, which sort of is the catalyst for starting this whole content, Lost in Translation, is the gulf between Africans and African Americans, Africans on the continent and African Americans. And when I got here, I started to hear perspectives that were single stories that were not necessarily true. They were true to certain people that it happened to, but it wasn't like a general perspective. And I felt like, why? We shouldn't be hostile towards one another. We shouldn't have these resentments towards one another. You know, but then are these beliefs, is there a point to that? Like, do they have reasons to hold such thoughts? I'm like, okay, what if we start a conversation about that? Like, rather than, you know, Twitter firing shots at one another, like, or just like be at war. Why can't we just start something and have conversations and like, okay, why do you think this way about me? Why do I think this way about you?
Right.
And, you know, I'm curious to know what your experience has been like, that of like what you've heard about Africans from the continent, or what you've experienced, and, you know, what you think about that.
I hadn't like heard anything, you know, really negative along the way. It's just that you see things that happen, or like you say in social media, you see how people respond to things that are African versus African American. And then you wonder, like, why is it like that?
Yeah.
So I do realize, because I do have, you know, some African friends, but, you know, it's like we're friends, you know, we get along, we vibe. And, but then I've heard things about how sometimes Africans from the continent feel that they're superior than African Americans. And I don't know why that is, though. I would like to understand, because I don't, you know. It's like we all have our roots there.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about, we came over here, my ancestors, I say, not voluntarily.
Yeah.
You know, we would have still been there, you know, but we were brought over here against our will, and so we dealt with the hand we're raised, you know, or gave. And so then we are where we are. So I don't understand why it is that way. And I think, you know, I was telling you about something I saw on social media, where a guy who, he was European, I think, but he was just giving Black people props for being able to dance. You know, he said, you guys just kill it, you know. But he was just, you know, just giving praise to, but he said Black people. So the African people in the comment were offended by that. You mean African people, you know? And because of the little boy that he was commenting on, the video he showed, he was actually in Africa. He was African. Yeah. And so I was thinking, like, they're just giving Black people props, period. And so the culture they're raised in, that's what they know, Black people, you know. And so to take offense to that, I didn't understand why. It's like, it's just, he take the positive part of that, like, because it was so positive, but they just found something negative to say about it instead of saying thank you, we be grooving or whatever, you know. So it's disheartening. You know what I mean?
And I
'Cause
think that's the downside to the world that we're living in, that some people just have their own thoughts and opinions, and they just project that over a vast majority of people, and that becomes a truth or a generally accepted opinion. Like, I comment on something that you shared, like just like how you've heard, or just from word around, that Africans from the continent have a superior mentality when they come here. Like, we back home too, like when I was in Nigeria, you would hear stories of Nigerians who have lived here and had terrible experiences from African Americans, and when they come and they spread that word, and it becomes this truth of this is who African Americans are. Like, you can't trust them. They are angry people. They are violent. They are shady. They are uncontrollable. They don't. But then when I got here, I realized that no, that's not true. Like, that may be true for that individual's experience, but I can't lump a whole
Group of people
into that
generalization.
That it's not healthy. And I think it's the same way where, like, African Americans who had terrible experiences with Africans, take that experience and make it a general truth. And I said, that's not going to help us.
Right.
That's not going to help us in the world that we are in today.
Right.
And I tell you something, like, there's a belief that, let me say, like, a lot of Africans believe that they are very spiritual people. But it's just religion. It's just, Nigerians can pray from today till tomorrow. Like, but then you ask, like, if we're really that spiritual, our life should be a lot more different than it is.
Right.
So it's like, we're religious. Like, those guys, they're not religious. They don't, look at the way they dress and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's not about that. And when I look at the character like Grandpa Tobi in Lost in Translation, it comes from that place where, like, I know everything that is to know about God. Like, I pray, I read my Bible, I'm anointed, and I'm not even going to wait to listen to you to actually hear what you're saying. I'm just going to go ahead and cast a demon that is in you. I kind of, like, when I think about that now, because I've heard stories too about, like, like the Baptist church, like, here in America, like, like African Americans, like when I see people, like, praise break and stuff like that, I'm curious, like, have you ever had that, like, did you grow up in that kind of experience where, like, in the church, when the spirit happens, like everybody, like, it's a whole show.
Yeah. So we, part of my childhood, we were raised Episcopalian, which is kind of similar to me to Catholic.
Okay.
So that's kind of how the service went. Then we went to Baptist. And so, that kind of thing, it's like the choir would sing and then people would be yelling out, and passing out, ugh. And then the usher would come and be fanning them. Or they'll come and be carrying them out. They be stiff as a board. And, we were young, so we're like, what is happening? Like,
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then we went to the Pentecostal church, and, they getting it, they got that music, and everybody's dancing, got their little dance.
When
on.
I think about goodness, and
yeah.
what it's done for me.
Hey.
When I think about goodness and how it set me free, I will dance all night.
Yep, exactly. And it do be all night service, all night. You under the pew talking about some,
Oh my goodness! Now, picture this. Picture that. Like, if you were to take that experience and bring it to a kid who's not had anything remote to that, who's been taken from home to home and just in the foster care system, and just finally lands in a place where, okay, there's spirituality that's being forced down her throat. I I say that to ask this question: how can our generation, or how can how can we do a better job at helping the younger generation, or helping people who have gone through a hard time or hard life, see the hope and the joy and the life that comes with our faith, that comes with having a great spiritual relationship with God. How can we do a better job, not 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 diluting it, but influencing them in the right way, and not just like forcing them to see how we see? I don't know if I worded that question rightly.
I think,
do you understand what I just said?
I think so. I think that for the younger generation, you number one just have to live it, but try to relate to them like where they are, in order to draw them in, but be real about what it is, what life is when you live this way, when you live for God. It's not all cookies and cream. You can still struggle and have these rough times, but the difference is that we have God, and that's where our hope lies, and where we hold on to say, I can make it through this is going to be okay no matter what. So when you have God, then you have that hope. But when you don't, then you don't have that hope. But you don't know you don't have that hope because you don't know God.
Yeah.
So I think it's just being that example for them, seeing where they are and meeting them at their point of need, like God meets us at our point of need. So if that's what you're asking,
and I think that's what I like and respect about you. Like when I see you, or when the first time I first met you, I was like, you carry such a open and inviting essence, that like you're happy, willing to connect, build relationships, and yet you still have your anchor, in faith. Compared to, certain people who I've met, who are like, oh, honey, you don't know what I done seen in this life. Like, I know better than you, and it's either like you go this way or you're going to hell, and they're not even willing to have conversations or even hear other thoughts, and I think that just pushes people away. So, and I feel like that's what I really just love to learn, just doing life with you and seeing you how just very open. And I think that's what our world needs today, where people who have relationship with the Lord can do without their Christianese when they're in places where people don't understand that, and just take that light and just be open and not force things, and not cast and bind at every opportunity that you get. So to land this plane, from the context of Grandpa Tobi, is there anything that sparks curiosity in you? Like, why is he the way he is?
No. I think you realize that that's where he was raised and how he was raised, and he's just coming from that place. So it's more of I feel like the differences in people need to be celebrated more, and we need to seek to understand rather than judge. It's like, so why is he? If you have a question, if you look and you see, okay, what is up with that? Then you ask that question, because you want to know, like, why is that person like that? Because that's what's going to help you to more relate to them rather than push a person away. Because when you're judgmental, you're not drawing nobody in. Nobody. But when you look and you see, okay, something must be going on, instead of, the knee-jerk reactions we can have when people might say or do something that we don't like, then if you take a second and not get offended immediately, and then you kind of think, okay, something must be up. And of course, that for me, that took maturing and growing in Christ to be able to look outside and want to know why is somebody like that, and pray for people instead of being like, I don't know what's up with her,
Because you were in the healthcare industry, like you and you have that experience where you meet a diverse group of people.
Yes, all the time. Mm-hmm.
I mean, how with this heart posture that you have, how does that impact how you interact? When in healthcare, when you're interacting with patients and people that have different experiences and different backgrounds and different mindsets,
I think is very helpful because you do see so many different people from different places, cultures, things, and you just kind of you move kind of slowly at first because you don't want to put people off, or you don't want people to feel uncomfortable being around you, because a lot of cultures are different than I am, of course, so it's just kind of feeling it out. Some things, you learn in school, they teach you about that, about cultures. This culture doesn't like you to just look at them like I'm looking at you. They don't like that. Or they don't like you they don't hug like that. They're not emotional. So you do learn some things in school, but some things you learn just by experience. As they come in, it's like, are they talkative? Do they want to talk to you? Or, and you just kind of go with the flow of things, but also just learning. Sometimes people are afraid. Like when I worked in surgery, they're in there and they're just like tight-lipped and they seem like they're really mean or mad, but they're not. They're just scared. But you learn that as you just being kind to them, being nice and asking them, what can I do for you or whatever. And then you learn, okay, they're just afraid. They're not mean, because people say, dang, she just cranky, but it's because they were afraid. So I think it's more taking the time to dig, to try to understand, like, why are they acting that way when they come in? Or, how do I approach this person to treat them?
That's such a beautiful way to put it, and to sort of cap this episode, because you said taking the time. And I feel like when in everything that we do, in our human interaction, if we take our time, things will not get lost in translation, because it's not just words that get lost in translation. It's even the non-verbals, the intentions, the motivations. But if I take the time and dig, like you said, and ask the questions, there's more insight that will come. Like you have the a much more rounded an opinion of that person's action or words, or and it helps you make a better decision and just makes life a better place. So I like that. That's a good word. That's a good word, darling. Wisdom. It comes in the gray. So I mean, do you have any wise sayings to leave us with as we wrap this episode?
Wise saying,
something, a word of wisdom, a rema, revelation.
Well, I would just say, be kind to people, be patient, and seek to understand before you form an opinion.
I love that. Wow. Be kind to people, seek to understand before you form an opinion. And that cuts to the heart of what we're doing, in the story of Lost in Translation, because Grandpa is too just like, it's my way or the highway. And Trisha is just like, I ain't got time for none of this. Right. Right. And that's how we are as a people. Like we are always swinging between those experiences, and if only we can just take time, probably there won't be World War III, hopefully. Yeah.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. All right. That was fun. Thank you, Darlene, for being a part of this episode, for being a guest, on this podcast. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Your smile kept me through the entire process.
Did it keep you awake like the sunshine?
Oh, it did. Darling, do you do poetry? You should do spoken word.
No, I do not. No,
No.
I cannot talk in front of a whole bunch of people.
I know, but you have that voice. You have that
Do I?
that Maya Angelou vibe.
Oh,
Like,
shoot.
they keep you alive. Like
Not
the
Maya.
sunshine. Oh my God, this has been fun. I really enjoyed myself, and I think we really touched on really beautiful points. And I think moving on from here, it's like we're building the bridge brick by brick towards bridging the gap between us as a people, because as Africans from the continent and African Americans, we are one and the same.
Yes.
We are more alike.
Yes.
It's just over time, life has happened to us that has altered our experiences. But it's our duty to be able to circumvent that and come back to unity rather than allow distance that divide us take root. So I'm excited for where this goes and people that will see this and Thank you, Darlene.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it's been a beautiful time on Lost Translation episode 2, and Darlene has been a wonderful guest. We see it's a beautiful ambience. We have the sun, just rising above us. I think that's a metaphor for the hope that we touched on in this episode. The hope of a better experience, a hope for better relationship across cultures and just amongst people groups. So yeah, stay tuned to Lost in Translation, the web series, episode 3 coming out soon, and the podcast. You can catch it on our YouTube, on Creators Code TV, and on Instagram, Creators Code channel. And my name is Damilola Afolabi, and see you again. Hey.